there, and welcome to Super Sorry. Once again, we have a one-message mailbag, and like last time, it comes from a listener who has chosen to remain nameless, aka anonymous.
Which we fully respect, legally and spiritually.
And this letter is pretty specific.
Like clinically specific?
I guess it's specific enough to raise questions that we're not going to be answering.
Correct. We will simply read the letter and stare straight ahead.
All right, so this is a longer message, which means we're switching off reading duties, kind of like a relay race.
For endurance.
Or for teamwork.
Oh, yeah, even better.
All right, I'll start out. Dear Super Starry team, I just finished your Thor the Dark World episode, and as someone who has spent a questionable portion of their early career as an assistant, unpaid, unprotected, and apparently unbreakable. Shout out to all the assistants out there. I too have done that job, and it is not an easy one and pretty underappreciated.
Very true. The letter continues on. You mentioned your concern about a certain scientist dragging her support staff into dangerous, glitchy, gravity-defying anomalies. Let me confirm, being near spontaneous wormholes is not part of most job descriptions, including mine.
Well, most people don't have that as part of their job description.
True. It's probably like more of a optional expansion pack, not really a core job responsibility.
All right. It goes on. Some of us in very similar situations worked entire semesters without compensation, unless you count terror, adrenaline, or student loan eligible trauma.
And since your apologies that could have been segment really spoke to me, here are a few apologies I personally would have appreciated from a brilliant but often distracted astrophysicist I once worked with. 1, sorry I introduced you to an interdimensional portal without warning. 2, sorry I disappeared for 5 hours and you had to call the authorities. 3, sorry about the deeply unsafe working conditions.
And yes, I heard what you said when you mentioned that Jane was very focused on science. I imagine she's probably the kind of person who walks straight into danger with the confidence of someone who has never once stopped to consider consequences.
And it goes on here. You also mentioned intern labor laws. Please know that I have since printed that part of your episode transcript, highlighted it, and taped it above my desk for the next time someone in particular happens to be in the office.
Okay, well, it's great to be an advocate for yourself, but I do want to caution, don't just take my word for it. You should go research intern labor laws where you are located.
Definitely true there. And I also think it's, probably good preparation for this person, yeah.
Preparation for what?
For a conversation that needs to happen with their coworker.
Oh, okay. Their boss. All right, it goes on, and since we're talking about accountability, your episode inspired me to reflect on a few of my own self-improvement attempts over the past few years, attempts which did not go well.
All right, we got the first one here, a mindfulness practice called Don't Follow the Scientist into the Danger Zone. This lasted 1 day. I hesitated, then I followed. But to be fair, I did hesitate first.
And there's another one, developing work-life balance. I attempted to separate my personal life from my boss's disasters. But she disappeared, then I was back to running the office, and then I was babysitting a confused intern, so that boundary collapsed very quickly.
Now it concludes with, anyway, thank you for confirming and validating that these types of conditions were indeed unsafe, and reminding me that hazard pay, snacks, and at least one overdue apology would have been reasonable. Yours anonymously, an assistant who has seen too much.
All right. Well, that's quite a letter. It seems like a lot of processing out loud to us.
And doing it calmly.
Well, whoever this person is, I hope they have a salaried job now.
Preferably with benefits.
All right. Well, before we wrap, let's just sit with this letter for a second, because what really seemed to help this person wasn't actually fixing everything. It was just naming what happened to them.
Yeah, that moment of going, oh, that wasn't normal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Thor, the Dark World, is full of that kind of thing. People treating chaos just like it's the cost of carrying. Jane accepts danger as part of discovery. Thor accepts collateral damage as part of duty. And everyone around them just sort of adjusts.
Which is kind of relatable, but just because you can handle something doesn't mean you should have to forever. If the only reason you're okay is because you're, gotten really good at surviving, that's not balance, that's coping.
I think a big takeaway here, at least for me, and maybe something that listeners can use too, is that reflection can give you clarity. Once you can identify what's happening, you get to make more intentional choices about what comes next.
And those choices don't always have to be, huge, dramatic life overhauls. Sometimes it's just a step, like, leaving a job or resetting a relationship.
And sometimes it can be smaller, like realizing I shouldn't have to put myself in risky situations just to prove I belong.
Honestly, that feels like a pretty solid result from a fan mail episode.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this wraps up our second piece of fan mail. Thoughtful and very relatable.
If any other anonymous listeners want to vent about unpaid labor, cosmic hazards, or coworkers who disappear into portals, our inbox is always open.
And if you don't, we are super sorry.
Let's go!
Super Sorry is written and hosted by Amber and Todd. Produced by A Super Sorry LLC. Music by Jam Studio. Your support helps us keep asking the hard questions and saying the hard apologies. Thanks for tuning in and sharing with friends. Super Sorry is not affiliated with Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios, the Walt Disney Company, or Disney+. As of this recording, all Marvel characters mentioned in the podcast are the property of the Walt Disney Company.